The quantum resonance scanner beeped its fourth false alarm of the morning, and Dr. Elena Vasquez seriously considered introducing it to the business end of her plasma torch. She wiped sweat from her brow, leaving a streak of crystalline dust across her forehead that probably made her look like she'd been wrestling with the planet's geology, which, technically, she had been. "Come on, you temperamental piece of," she caught herself mid-curse, remembering that the outpost's AI had a tendency to record everything and send it back to Earth Command. The last thing she needed was another formal reprimand for unprofessional language in scientific logs. As if anyone back on Earth had ever tried to coax meaningful data out of equipment that had been designed by the lowest bidder and shipped through 7 wormhole jumps. The scanner chirped again, this time with a different tone, one that made Elena's pulse quicken despite months of false readings. Deep beneath Kepler 442b's crystalline crust, something metallic was reflecting her probe signals in patterns that suggested artificial construction. She adjusted the quantum frequency, her fingers dancing across holographic controls with practiced ease, and the reading solidified into something that made her breath catch. "Well, I'll be damned," she whispered, then louder, "Are you getting this?" "Affirmative, Dr. Vasquez." The subsurface anomaly exhibits characteristics consistent with manufactured materials. "Shall I alert Earth Command?" Elena paused, her finger hovering over the communication array. Earth Command would want samples, reports, and probably her head on a platter if this turned out to be another geological quirk masquerading as first contact. "Not yet. Let me dig it up first." Literally. The excavation took 3 hours, during which Elena's mining drones carved through layers of crystal and compressed sediment while she muttered increasingly creative combinations of scientific terminology and profanity. Her coffee had gone cold twice, the atmospheric recycler had started making that whining noise again, and she'd somehow managed to get more dirt under her fingernails despite wearing sealed work gloves. When the drones finally broke through to the metallic object, Elena nearly dropped her scanner. The thing was small, maybe 3 meters long and half as wide, but its surface gleamed with an iridescent quality that shifted between colors she had names for and several she didn't. More importantly, it was clearly a pod of some kind, with seams that suggested an opening mechanism and what looked suspiciously like viewing ports along one side. Run a full-spectrum analysis on this thing. I want to know what it's made of, how long it's been down there, and whether it's going to explode if I sneeze on it wrong. Analysis indicates the object is constructed from an unknown metallic compound with quantum-coherent properties. Age estimation suggests burial approximately 6 months ago. Explosive potential appears minimal, though I should note that my sensors cannot penetrate the hull to determine contents. Elena circled the pod, her scientific curiosity warring with common sense. Common sense suggested calling for backup, running every test in the book, and approaching with extreme caution. Scientific curiosity suggested that backup would take 6 weeks to arrive and probably mess everything up anyway. Scientific curiosity won, as it usually did. The opening mechanism turned out to be surprisingly intuitive, a series of biometric sensors that responded to her touch after a moment's hesitation. The pod's lid split open with a soft hiss of escaping atmosphere, revealing an interior lined with some kind of adaptive gel that had formed perfectly around its occupant. Elena stared down at what was unmistakably a child. She looked human, completely, utterly human, except for her ears, which were elegantly elongated and came to delicate points, like something out of ancient Earth mythology. The girl couldn't have been more than 12 years old, with pale skin and dark hair that seemed to shimmer with its own inner light. She was breathing, Elena realized with relief, though her respiration was slow and measured in a way that suggested some kind of stasis. "Well, this complicates things," Elena murmured, then called out, "AI, tell me you're recording all of this." Affirmative. However, I feel compelled to point out that first contact protocols specifically state. First contact protocols were written by people who never expected to find alien children in crashed pods, Elena interrupted, reaching for her medical scanner. And I'm pretty sure they don't cover interspecies babysitting. The medical readings were fascinating and terrifying in equal measure. The child's biology was remarkably similar to human baseline, but with subtle differences that suggested adaptation to different environmental conditions. Her brain patterns showed the distinctive waves of natural sleep rather than technological stasis, which meant she might wake up soon. As if summoned by Elena's thoughts, the girl's eyes fluttered open, large, dark eyes that seemed to hold depths Elena couldn't fathom. The child sat up slowly, blinking in confusion at her surroundings, and Elena found herself holding her breath. The girl's gaze settled on Elena, and she spoke in a voice like silver bells, "Kethera mor valuan." Elena's universal translator crackled to life, offering. Approximate translation, "Where am I, gentle one?" "You're safe," Elena said carefully, holding up her hands to show she meant no harm. "You're on Kepler 442b. I'm Elena. I found your pod." The girl tilted her head, her pointed ears twitching slightly as she processed the information. When she spoke again, it was in heavily accented but recognizable universal standard, "Pod, yes. Escape pod. The void hunters came, and Mother. Mother said run to the safe nest." "Void hunters?" Elena's blood chilled at the ominous name. "Who are they?" But the girl wasn't listening anymore. She was staring at something in her hand, a small, bioluminescent device that pulsed with soft blue light. As Elena watched, the device projected a complex holographic star map into the air between them, showing stellar positions and trajectory lines that made Elena's head spin. "The nest mother," the girl whispered, her fingers dancing over the hologram. "I must find the nest mother before they return." Elena's scientific mind was racing, cataloging details and filing away questions for later analysis. But a deeper part of her, the part that remembered being 12 and scared and far from home, simply reached out and gently touched the child's shoulder. "Hey," she said softly. "Whatever's going on, you don't have to face it alone. My name's Elena. What's yours?" The girl looked up at her with those impossibly deep eyes, and Elena saw fear there, and loneliness, but also a spark of hope. "I am Zara of the Ethereal Collective," she said formally, then with a small smile that transformed her entire face, "but I think I would like to be just Zara, for now." Elena smiled back, already feeling the first stirrings of protective instincts she'd thought were reserved for petri dishes and experimental data. "Just Zara works fine. Now, how about we get you out of that pod and find you something to eat? I can't promise much, the food synthesizer has been acting up again. But I make a mean cup of reconstituted coffee." Zara's nose wrinkled. "What is coffee?" "Oh, sweet child," Elena said with mock solemnity, "do we have a lot to teach each other?" 3 weeks had passed since Elena discovered Zara in the crystalline depths of Kepler 442b, and the outpost had transformed from a sterile research facility into something that resembled actual life. The change wasn't immediately obvious, the same gleaming corridors, the same humming machinery, the same perpetually malfunctioning environmental systems, but there was warmth now where before there had been only clinical efficiency. "Elena Hart, your coffee machine is crying again," Zara announced from the kitchen alcove, her voice carrying that particular mix of concern and amusement that had become Elena's favorite sound in the universe. Elena looked up from her data pad, where she'd been analyzing the latest readings from the planetary core scans. "It's not crying, Zara. It's just making that whining noise because the pressure valve is." She paused, watching as the 12-year-old alien placed her small hands on the synthesizer's control panel. The machine's distressed whimpering immediately shifted to a contented purr. "There," Zara said with satisfaction, her pointed ears twitching slightly as she concentrated. It was lonely. The quantum resonance patterns were all jagged and sad. Elena had long since given up trying to understand how Zara could diagnose mechanical problems by what she claimed were their emotional states. The child's intuitive grasp of technology bordered on the supernatural, though she explained it in terms that made Elena's physics training want to hide under a rock and whimper. "Machines don't have feelings, kiddo," Elena said automatically, then immediately regretted it as Zara's face fell. "But they do," Zara insisted, her dark eyes serious. Everything that thinks has feelings. The quantum processors in your computers dream of electric sheep, just like in that old Earth story you showed me. And your atmospheric recycler gets grumpy when it's overworked. As if summoned by the mention, the atmospheric recycler chose that moment to emit a particularly petulant wheeze. Elena stared at it suspiciously. I swear that thing has it out for me. It just wants attention, Zara said, already moving toward the offending machine. Like me when I first woke up in the pod. The casual reference to their first meeting made Elena's chest tighten with an emotion she wasn't quite ready to name. Over the past 3 weeks, Zara had slowly opened up about her people, the Ethereal Collective, a nomadic species that existed partially outside normal spacetime, traveling between dimensions in ships that were part vessel, part living organism. Their technology was based on quantum consciousness interfaces, which explained Zara's ability to communicate with machines as if they were pets. It also explained why the child could improve Elena's equipment with casual touches while simultaneously being baffled by concepts like shoelaces and the necessity of eating meals at regular intervals. The nest mothers say that young ones must learn to speak with the metal minds before they can join the deep swimming, Zara had explained one evening as she effortlessly repaired Elena's geological scanner. But I was always better at listening to the small thoughts than the grand songs. Elena had made careful notes about everything Zara told her, part of her scientific training insisting on documentation even as the rest of her simply enjoyed having someone to talk to who didn't respond with pre-programmed pleasantries. The AI was competent but hardly stimulating company, and Earth Command's weekly check-ins were exercises in bureaucratic tedium. Dr. Vasquez, your progress reports have become increasingly colorful, Commander Harrison had noted during their last video call. References to geological stubbornness and crystalline passive aggression are not standard scientific terminology. Elena had glanced at Zara, who was sitting just outside the camera's range working on what appeared to be a 3-dimensional puzzle made of pure light, and had to bite back a smile. I'm finding that standard terminology doesn't always capture the full complexity of the situation, Commander. Now, watching Zara coax the atmospheric recycler back to proper functioning with gentle touches and what sounded like encouraging whispers, Elena wondered how she was going to explain any of this in her reports. How did you document the fact that an alien child could improve your equipment's efficiency by 30% simply by asking it nicely? There, Zara said, stepping back from the recycler with satisfaction. It says thank you for finally cleaning the filters last week. I cleaned those filters 3 days ago, Elena protested. Time is different for machines, Zara said seriously. They experience maintenance like we experience seasons, long periods of gradual change punctuated by moments of renewal. Elena shook her head, but she was smiling. Living with Zara was like having a combination technical assistant, philosopher, and occasionally frustrating younger sibling. The child's questions about human customs had led to some of the most interesting conversations Elena had ever had, often revealing assumptions she hadn't realized she was making. Why do humans eat the same food every day? Zara had asked after her third encounter with Elena's standard breakfast of synthetic eggs and reconstituted fruit juice. We don't eat the same food every day, Elena had replied. This is just convenient. But you had this yesterday, and the day before, and the day before that. In the collective, each meal is a story. The flavors tell you about the places the ingredients grew, the emotions of those who prepared them, the dreams of those who will share them. Elena had looked down at her perfectly adequate but undeniably boring breakfast and had suddenly felt like she was seeing her entire lifestyle through alien eyes. The next day, she'd programmed the synthesizer to produce something called Terran Fusion Surprise, which had turned out to be surprisingly edible despite its unsettling orange color. The real surprise, though, had been watching Zara's face light up as she tasted the unfamiliar combination of flavors. The child had closed her eyes, her pointed ears quivering slightly with concentration, and had declared it a song of curiosity and adventure, with undertones of Elena Hart's laughter. You're going to make me insufferably sentimental, Elena had muttered, but she'd been smiling as she said it. Their daily routines had evolved organically around their different needs and abilities. Elena continued her geological surveys, now with Zara's help interpreting the quantum resonance patterns that had previously seemed random. The child could read the planet's crystalline structure like Elena read data streams, pointing out formations that held historical significance or areas where the mineral composition suggested ancient technological activity. This place was not always sleeping, Zara had said during one of their survey expeditions, her small hand pressed against a towering crystal formation that jutted from the planet's surface like a frozen waterfall. The stone memories speak of great machines and many voices singing together in harmony. Elena's instruments had confirmed what Zara sensed, energy signatures buried deep in the planet's crust, patterns that suggested a once thriving civilization. But where Elena saw archaeological potential, Zara seemed to see something sadder. What happened to them? Elena had asked. Zara's expression had grown distant, her dark eyes reflecting depths that seemed too old for her young face. The stone memories are frightened. They speak of darkness between stars, of hunters that devour light itself. The singers fell silent, and the machines slept, and the world became crystal and dust. The mention of hunters had made Elena think of the void hunters Zara had referenced on her first day, but when she pressed for details, the child had only shaken her head and changed the subject. There were depths to Zara that Elena was only beginning to glimpse, layers of knowledge and experience that seemed impossible for someone so young. It was during their third week together that Elena began to understand the true extent of Zara's abilities. The outpost's main computer had suffered a cascade failure when a solar flare disrupted the orbital satellite array, leaving Elena with backup systems that barely had enough processing power to maintain life support, much less run her research programs. "This is going to take days to fix," Elena had muttered, staring at error messages scrolling across every available screen. "Assuming I can fix it at all without replacement components." Zara had appeared at her shoulder, studying the chaos of malfunctioning systems with the same intense concentration she brought to everything. "The thinking machines are frightened," she'd said finally. The solar fire voice was too loud, and they forgot how to speak to each other. "That's actually not a terrible description of a cascade failure," Elena had admitted. "May I help?" Elena had been about to explain that computer repair required specialized knowledge and years of training when she remembered who she was talking to. Instead, she'd simply stepped aside and watched as Zara placed her hands on the main interface panel. What happened next had been like watching magic disguised as science. Zara's eyes had closed, her breathing had deepened, and the bioluminescent patches along her elongated ears had begun to glow with soft, pulsing light. The computer systems had responded immediately, error messages clearing as connections re-established themselves and corrupted data streams began flowing smoothly once again. But more than that, Elena had watched her instruments register efficiency improvements across every system. Power consumption dropped by 15% while processing speed increased. Background tasks that had been running sluggishly for months suddenly completed in minutes. Even the perpetually failing coffee synthesizer had started producing beverages that actually tasted like their programmed flavors. "How?" Elena had asked when Zara finally opened her eyes. "I asked them to remember how to be happy," Zara had said simply. "Machines work better when they are content." Elena had stared at the child, really looked at her, and had suddenly realized that she wasn't just caring for a lost alien child. She was harboring someone whose abilities made her potentially the most valuable person in known space. The thought should have excited her scientist's mind, but instead it filled her with protective instincts that surprised her with their intensity. Zara wasn't a research subject or a first contact opportunity. She was family, Elena realized with a start. Somehow, in 3 short weeks, this strange, wonderful child had become the most important thing in her world. Elena Hart. Zara's voice brought her back to the present, where the child was watching her with those impossibly perceptive dark eyes. "Your thoughts are making sad colors. Are you worried about the nest mother again?" Elena's chest clenched. Zara's bioluminescent device had been growing brighter each day, its holographic star maps updating with new trajectory information that pointed towards something approaching their system. Something large, according to the quantum signatures, and moving in patterns that suggested intelligence rather than natural phenomena. A little, Elena admitted. Are you? Zara considered this with the gravity that she brought to all serious questions. Yes and no, she said finally. The nest mother loves me, but love and understanding are different things. She may not comprehend why I have grown so fond of Elena Hart, or why the thought of leaving makes my spirit feel small and cold. The casual way Zara referred to their relationship as something worth preserving made Elena's throat tight with emotion. You could try explaining it to her. The ethereal collective does not always understand connections that cross the species boundaries, Zara said carefully. We are taught that other races are limited in their emotional capacity. But Elena Hart has shown me that this is not true. Elena pulled the child into a gentle hug, marveling at how natural the gesture had become. Whatever happens when your mother arrives, we'll figure it out together, okay? Zara nodded against her shoulder, and Elena felt the subtle vibration of the child's contented purr, a sound she'd learned indicated deep happiness in ethereal physiology. Outside the outpost's reinforced windows, Kepler 442b's crystalline landscape glittered under the light of its binary stars, beautiful and alien and somehow less lonely than it had been a month ago. Elena's instruments registered normal readings across all spectrums, but she knew that somewhere in the void between stars, something was coming that would change everything. For now, though, there was just this. A human woman and an alien child, sitting together in a small bubble of warmth and safety while the universe spun around them, vast and full of possibilities. The space around Kepler 442b didn't so much tear as it did politely excuse itself from existence. Elena watched through the outpost's reinforced observation dome as reality folded inward like origami made of starlight, creating a wound in the fabric of space-time that her instruments insisted wasn't there even as her eyes confirmed it absolutely was. Well, that's not ominous at all, she muttered, her hands flying over the sensor controls. AI, please tell me you're getting readings on whatever just made physics cry. I am detecting significant spatial distortions that my programming insists are impossible, the AI replied with what Elena could swear was a note of mechanical distress. I am experiencing what humans might call an existential crisis. Join the club, Elena said, then glanced at Zara, who stood beside her with an expression of nervous anticipation. The child's bioluminescent device was pulsing so brightly it cast dancing shadows on the walls, and her pointed ears were practically vibrating with excitement. The nest mother comes, Zara whispered, her voice carrying harmonics that made Elena's teeth ache. She rides the storm winds between realities. Storm winds between realities, Elena repeated. Right. Because normal space travel is for amateurs. The tear in spacetime widened, and something emerged that made Elena's brain hurt to look at directly. The ship, if it could be called a ship, seemed to exist in more dimensions than human perception was equipped to handle. Its hull rippled like liquid metal while maintaining the structural integrity of crystallized thought, and patterns of light flowed across its surface that suggested intelligence so vast Elena felt like an ant trying to comprehend architecture. Okay, Elena said faintly. That's definitely your ride. The vessel settled into orbit with the casual ease of something that found planetary gravity mildly amusing rather than binding, and Elena's instruments registered energy signatures that made fusion reactors look like candles. A smaller craft detached from the main ship, descending toward the outpost with the kind of perfect trajectory control that suggested technology so advanced it had probably forgotten more about physics than humanity had ever learned. Elena Hart, Zara said softly, reaching for her hand. Whatever the nest mother says, remember that the heart bonds we have forged are real. They cannot be unmade by words or customs or the vastness between stars. Elena squeezed the child's fingers, marveling at how someone so young could possess such wisdom. I'll remember. And Zara? Whatever happens, I'm proud to have been your father Hart, even if it was only for a little while. The landing craft touched down in the outpost's main bay with barely a whisper of displaced air, its hull seamlessly dissolving to reveal an interior that seemed to be carved from crystallized music. And from that impossible vessel stepped a figure that made Elena's breath catch in her throat. Empress Lyralii of the Ethereal Collective was everything Elena had imagined Zara might become in 30 years, and everything she hoped the child would never have to be. The resemblance was unmistakable, the same delicate features, the same impossibly dark eyes, the same elegantly pointed ears. But where Zara radiated warmth and curiosity, Lyralii projected an authority so absolute it seemed to bend local spacetime around her. She was tall, even by human standards, draped in robes that shifted color with her movements and adorned with jewelry that Elena's instruments insisted were actually microscopic galaxies held in quantum suspension. Her ears were decorated with what looked like tiny stars, each one pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat, and when she moved, reality seemed to adjust itself to accommodate her presence. "Your Majesty," Elena began, attempting something that might pass for diplomatic protocol. Lyralii's gaze swept over her with the clinical detachment of someone cataloging an interesting but ultimately insignificant specimen. "You are the human who found my daughter," she said, her voice carrying harmonics that made the outpost's walls resonate like a tuning fork. "I am Dr. Elena Vasquez," Elena replied, fighting the urge to either bow or hide behind the nearest piece of furniture. "And yes, I found Zara about a month ago." "Nest mother." Zara's delighted cry broke through the formal tension as she launched herself at Lyralii with all the enthusiasm of a child who had been separated from her parent for far too long. Lyralii caught her daughter effortlessly, and for a moment, the imperial mask slipped to reveal genuine relief and love. She held Zara close, murmuring words in the melodic language of the Ethereal Collective while her hands checked the child for injuries with practiced efficiency. "My little star singer," Lyralii said softly. "When the Void Hunters attacked and your escape pod was damaged, I feared, but you are well. You are safe." "I am more than safe," Zara said earnestly. "I have learned so much, Nest Mother. About humans and their customs and the way their thinking machines dream of electric sheep. And Elena Hart has been." "Elena Hart?" Lyralii's attention snapped to Elena with laser-like intensity, and suddenly the temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. "You have formed an attachment bond with this human?" Elena felt like she was being examined by a force of nature that happened to be wearing a vaguely humanoid shape. "We've become close, yes. Zara is a remarkable child." "Indeed she is," Lyralii agreed, her tone suggesting that Elena had just stated that water was wet. "She is also the heir to the ethereal throne and the prophesied bridgewalker who will unite the scattered peoples against the darkness between stars. She is not a stray creature to be collected by lonely scientists." "Hey now," Elena said, her protective instincts overriding her sense of self-preservation. "I didn't collect anyone. I found a scared child in a crashed pod and tried to help her. If that's somehow wrong, then maybe your people need to reconsider their priorities." Lyralii's eyes widened slightly, as if no one had contradicted her in several centuries. "You dare to lecture an empress of the Ethereal Collective on matters of priority? I dare to point out that your daughter was lost, alone, and terrified when I found her," Elena shot back. "And in the time she's been here, she's been happy, safe, and loved. If that's somehow a problem for you, then frankly, Your Majesty, the problem isn't mine." The silence that followed was so complete that Elena could hear her own heartbeat thundering in her ears. Lyralii stared at her with an expression that could have flashed frozen plasma, while Zara looked between them with growing distress. "You believe," Lyralii said finally, her voice dangerously quiet, "that a human is capable of understanding the sacred bonds of ethereal family structure?" "I believe that love doesn't require understanding species-specific family structures," Elena replied, surprised by her own boldness. "I believe that caring for someone means wanting what's best for them, even when it's inconvenient. And I believe that Zara deserves to have people in her life who see her as more than just a prophesy or a political asset." "Elena Hart speaks truth," Zara said quietly, her small voice cutting through the tension like a blade. "In the time I have been here, I have learned that hearts can bridge any distance, even the spaces between species. The humans have a saying, home is where the heart is. I have found home here, Nest Mother. Not because the walls are familiar, but because Elena Hart made me feel that my spirit had a place to rest. Lyraliai's expression softened slightly as she looked down at her daughter. Little star singer, you have always seen connections where others see only void. It is your gift and your burden. But this human cannot comprehend the responsibilities that await you, the destiny that calls to your blood. Maybe not, Elena admitted. But I understand that she's 12 years old, and 12-year-olds need stability and affection and someone who thinks they're wonderful just because they exist. Destiny can wait in line behind bedtime stories and fixed coffee synthesizers. Bedtime stories? Lyraliai looked genuinely puzzled. Oh, Nest Mother, Elena Hart tells the most wonderful tales. Zara's face lit up with enthusiasm. Stories of brave explorers and distant worlds and creatures made of pure mathematics who learn to love. And she makes them different every night, weaving in things I have told her about our people and the deep swimming between dimensions. Elena felt her cheeks warm. The bedtime stories had started as a practical solution to Zara's difficulty sleeping in an unfamiliar environment, but they had quickly become one of her favorite parts of each day. There was something magical about watching the child's eyes grow wide with wonder as Elena spun tales of interstellar adventure and cosmic friendship. She also taught me about human humor, Zara continued. Did you know that humans have a form of linguistic play called puns, that are simultaneously beloved and reviled? Elena Hart says they are so bad they're good, which is a paradox that perfectly encapsulates human nature. I see, Lyraliai said, though her tone suggested she didn't see at all. Oh, and she fixed the atmospheric recycler by telling it jokes until it started working properly again, Zara added helpfully. She said laughter is the best medicine, even for mechanical ailments. Elena winced. That's not exactly how it happened. You employed humor as a mechanical repair technique? Lyraliai asked, her eyebrows climbing toward her hairline. I may have anthropomorphized the machinery while expressing frustration at its performance issues, Elena admitted. Zara thought I was being intentionally funny. And it worked. Zara said triumphantly. The recycler has been perfectly content ever since. Lyraliai stared at Elena for a long moment, then at her daughter, then back at Elena. You fixed a malfunctioning atmospheric processor through the application of comedy? Look, it's been a weird month, okay? Elena said defensively. I've learned to roll with it. To Elena's complete surprise, Lyraliai's lips twitched. Indeed. I can see that my daughter has been, well cared for. Your methods may be unconventional, Dr. Vasquez, but their effectiveness is evident. The admission seemed to cost her something, but it also seemed to ease the tension in the room. Zara beamed at both of them, her pointed ears practically glowing with happiness. However, Lyraliai continued, her imperial mask sliding back into place, the fact remains that Zara has responsibilities that extend far beyond this outpost. The Void Hunters grow bolder with each passing cycle, and the scattered peoples of the galaxy require the Bridgewalker to unite them. She cannot fulfill her destiny while playing house with a human scientist. What if she could do both? Elena asked, the word surprising even herself. Excuse me. What if there was a way for Zara to fulfill her responsibilities without giving up the connections she's made here? What if the Bridgewalker's ability to unite different peoples actually depends on her understanding of interspecies relationships? Lyraliai was quiet for a long moment, her dark eyes thoughtful. You suggest that my daughter's attachment to you serves a greater purpose? I suggest that maybe the best way to teach someone to bridge differences between species is to let them experience genuine friendship across those differences, Elena replied. Zara has learned more about human nature in a month than most diplomats learn in years. She understands our strengths and weaknesses, our humor and our fears. If she's supposed to unite different peoples, doesn't it make sense that she should understand them first? Elena Hart makes a compelling argument, Zara said hopefully. And the quantum resonance patterns of the planet have been teaching me much about ancient civilizations and the fall of the First Kingdom. Perhaps there is wisdom to be gained here that cannot be found in the deep swimming between stars. Lyralei looked at her daughter with an expression Elena couldn't quite read. You speak of learning, little star singer. What have you learned? Zara's face grew serious, her young features taking on depths that reminded Elena uncomfortably of how much she still didn't know about the child's true nature. I have learned that love is not diminished by distance or difference, but is instead made stronger by them. I have learned that courage often looks like kindness, and that wisdom sometimes sounds like laughter. I have learned that home is not a place but a feeling, and that family can be chosen as well as born. She took Elena's hand in one of hers and reached for Lyralei's with the other. I have learned that perhaps the bridgewalker's greatest strength will not be in commanding others to unite, but in showing them that unity is possible through the simple act of caring for each other across the void. Elena felt tears prick at her eyes as she looked at this remarkable child who had somehow become the center of her universe. Across from her, Lyralei's expression was softening in a way that suggested she was seeing her daughter with new eyes. You have grown wise, my little star singer, Lyralei said quietly. Perhaps there is indeed more for you to learn here than I initially understood. The quantum resonance patterns emerging from deep within Kepler 442b's crystalline core painted a story that made Elena's scientific mind reel and her protective instincts scream in equal measure. The ancient energy signatures she and Zara had been tracking weren't just archaeological curiosities, they were warning beacons, left behind by a civilization that had faced the same darkness now approaching their corner of the galaxy. The stone memories speak of the first great silence, Zara said softly, her small hands pressed against the main sensor array as she interpreted readings that Elena's most sophisticated instruments could barely detect. The Void Hunters came here long ago, when this world sang with a billion voices. They devoured the light, consumed the songs, and left only crystal tears behind. Lyralei studied the holographic display with the intensity of someone accustomed to making decisions that affected entire star systems. The First Kingdom fell to them 3 millennia ago. We thought their world ships had been destroyed in the final battle. Apparently, some of them survived, Elena said grimly, watching as her long-range sensors picked up disturbances at the edge of the system. And according to these readings, they're not alone. There are at least a dozen vessels moving in formation toward us. Nest Mother, Zara said suddenly, her voice tight with excitement rather than fear, the deep patterns show something else. The First Kingdom didn't just leave warnings, they left weapons. This entire planet is a vast defensive array, sleeping beneath the crystal layers. Elena's instruments confirmed what Zara sensed, revealing a network of interconnected structures buried throughout the planet's crust. It's like a massive circuit, she breathed. The whole world is one giant machine, just waiting for someone to turn it on. But how? Lyralei asked. The First Kingdom's technology was based on harmonic resonance, requiring specific frequency combinations that died with their last singers. Zara's eyes brightened with understanding. Not their singers, Nest Mother. Our singers. The ethereal gift for quantum consciousness interfaces, we're compatible with their systems. That's why the escape pod brought me here. It wasn't random, it was following the beacon protocols. So you're saying this planet is basically a giant alien defense system that needs an ethereal to operate it? Elena asked. That's either the most convenient coincidence in galactic history or the universe has a really twisted sense of humor. The universe's sense of humor is well documented, Lyralei said with what Elena was learning to recognize as ethereal dry wit. Though usually less helpful than this. The approaching Void Hunter fleet provided a deadline that made theoretical discussions academic. Elena watched her sensors track the enemy vessels as they moved through the outer system, their passage leaving dead zones in space where starlight simply ceased to exist. 12 ships, she reported. Each one roughly the size of a small moon and radiating energy patterns that make my instruments want to file formal complaints. The Void Hunters don't build ships so much as hollow out realities and wear them like armor, Lyralei explained. They exist partially outside normal spacetime, which makes them nearly impossible to destroy through conventional means. Good thing we're not planning on conventional means, Elena said, turning to Zara. Can you really activate this planetary defense system? Zara nodded, though her expression was thoughtful. I can interface with the harmonic networks, but I'll need help maintaining the connection. The quantum consciousness requirements are enormous, too much for one person to handle safely. I can assist, Lyralii said immediately. The Imperial Resonance training will allow me to link with your patterns. Actually, Zara said carefully, I was thinking of Elena Hart. Both women stared at the child. Zara, Elena said gently, I appreciate the confidence, but I'm human. I don't have quantum consciousness interfaces or harmonic resonance abilities or whatever else this requires. No, Zara agreed, but you have something else. You have the bridge song. The what now? The bridge song, Zara repeated, as if this explained everything. The harmony that connects different kinds of consciousness. It's how you've been fixing the thinking machines, Elena Hart. You don't speak to them the way we do, but you understand them in ways that we cannot. You translate between different types of awareness. Elena felt a familiar sensation, the same mixture of scientific fascination and complete bewilderment that had characterized most of her time with Zara. Are you saying I have some kind of psychic ability I didn't know about? Not psychic, Lyralii said slowly, her eyes studying Elena with new interest. Empathic. The ability to form genuine emotional connections across species barriers is extraordinarily rare. Perhaps 1 in a billion beings possess it naturally. Great, Elena muttered. I'm a statistical anomaly. That explains so much about my dating life. Zara giggled, the sound bright and musical in the tense atmosphere. Elena Hart's humor song is also part of the bridge pattern. Laughter creates quantum harmonics that dissolve barriers between different consciousness types. You're telling me that my terrible jokes are literally a superpower? Elena asked incredulously. The universe has a sense of irony to match its sense of humor, Lyralii observed. Very well. If my daughter believes you can assist in activating the First Kingdom's defenses, then we must attempt it. The activation process turned out to be less dramatic than Elena had expected and far more intimate. The three of them stood in the outpost's central chamber, hands linked in a triangle, while Zara's bioluminescent markings pulsed in rhythm with the planet's newly awakened energy patterns. Feel the stone dreams, Zara whispered, her consciousness reaching out through quantum channels that Elena was only beginning to perceive. The sleeping songs want to wake, but they need permission from hearts that understand both connection and sacrifice. Elena closed her eyes and tried to do whatever it was she was supposed to be doing. She thought about the past month, about finding Zara in the escape pod and watching her transform the sterile outpost into something resembling a home. She thought about bedtime stories and fixed coffee synthesizers and the way the child's face lit up when she understood a new concept. Something shifted in her awareness, like tuning into a radio frequency she hadn't known existed. Suddenly she could sense the vast network of crystalline structures beneath their feet, dormant systems that had been waiting for millennia for someone to remember their purpose. I can feel it, she breathed. It's like the entire planet is dreaming, and it's asking us to help it remember how to wake up. The bridge song, Zara said with satisfaction. You're translating between the First Kingdom's harmonic language and our quantum patterns. The defense network recognizes the intent even though the implementation is different. Power flowed through the planet's crystalline matrix like blood returning to sleeping limbs. Elena's instruments registered energy levels that should have been impossible, reality-distorting fields that turned physics into more of a set of polite suggestions than immutable laws. Above them, the Void Hunter fleet suddenly found themselves facing something they hadn't encountered in 3,000 years, active resistance. The First Kingdom's weapons weren't cannons or missiles or anything that human military doctrine would recognize. They were songs made solid, harmony patterns that reached across space and reminded the stolen realities what they had been before the Void Hunters hollow them out. It's beautiful, Elena whispered, watching through the outpost sensors as the enemy fleet foundered in space that suddenly remembered how to support life instead of consuming it. The battle, if it could be called that, lasted less than an hour. The void hunters fled back into the darkness between dimensions, leaving behind space that sparkled with restored starlight and quantum echoes of a billion voices raised in defiant song. "So," Elena said as the three of them sat in the aftermath, sharing what the food synthesizer optimistically called victory cake, "what happens now?" Lyralei looked at her daughter with an expression that mixed pride, love, and something that might have been wonder. "Now, I believe, we have a conversation about unconventional diplomatic postings." "Meaning?" Elena asked. "Meaning," Lyralei said carefully, "that perhaps the Bridgewalker's education should include extended study in interspecies relations. Under the guidance of someone who has demonstrated a natural aptitude for such connections." Elena felt her heart skip. "Are you offering me a job?" "I am offering you a family," Lyralei corrected. "The ethereal collective has no formal precedent for adopting humans into noble houses, but then again, we have no precedent for humans who can activate First Kingdom defense networks through the power of empathic humor, either." "Heart Guardian," Zara said happily. "That's the proper title. Elena Hart would be my heart guardian, responsible for teaching me about emotional bridges between species. And the practical implications of this would be..." Elena prompted, hardly daring to believe what she was hearing. "You would come with us," Lyralei said simply. "Travel between stars, explore new worlds, help prepare my daughter for her destiny while ensuring she remains grounded in the values that make her who she is. It would mean leaving behind everything you've known." Elena looked around the outpost that had been her home for 2 years, then at the child who had transformed it into something infinitely more precious in just 1 month. The choice, when she really thought about it, wasn't difficult at all. "Well," she said, grinning at Zara's expectant face, "I suppose someone needs to make sure the galaxy's most important 12-year-old remembers to eat her vegetables and gets enough sleep. That's a pretty important job, right?" "The most important job in the universe," Zara declared solemnly, then spoiled the effect by launching herself into Elena's arms with a delighted laugh. Later, as Elena packed her few belongings while Zara helped, by providing a running commentary on the emotional significance of each item, she realized that her life had changed in ways she was only beginning to understand. 6 weeks ago, she had been Dr. Elena Vasquez, xenobiologist, content with her solitary research and simple routines. Now she was about to become heart guardian to an alien princess, part of a family that spanned species and star systems, responsible for helping to prepare a child for a destiny that would reshape the galaxy. It should have been terrifying. Instead, it felt like coming home. "Elena Hart?" Zara's voice interrupted her thoughts. "Are you having second thoughts? The quantum resonance patterns around you are very swirly and uncertain." "No second thoughts," Elena assured her. "Just first thoughts about all the adventures we're going to have together. Will you still tell me bedtime stories?" "Every night," Elena promised. "Though I might need to start researching new material. I have a feeling the galaxy is going to give us plenty of inspiration." Zara's smile could have powered the outpost for a week. "I love you too, Father Hart." Outside the reinforced windows, Lyralei's ship waited in the crystalline landscape, its hull shimmering with promise of wonders beyond Elena's wildest imagination. Tomorrow they would leave Kepler for 42b behind and venture into the vast unknown, 3 unlikely family members bound together by love that transcended species and destiny that demanded they face the darkness between stars. But tonight, there was still time for one more story, one more cup of perfectly synthesized coffee, and one more evening of being simply Elena and Zara, human and alien, family in the truest sense of the word. The universe was vast and full of dangers, but it was also full of possibilities, and Elena had learned that sometimes the most important discoveries weren't found in distant stars but in the connections forged between hearts brave enough to reach across the infinite spaces that divide us. The galaxy awaited, and they would face it together.